The myth of the unbroken blade. In 1645, a swordsman dates his manuscript and prepares for death. On the 25th of November, 1970, a novelist stages his. Prologue. The public myth. The myth says masculinity is timeless, Bushido is eternal. The code survives untouched. Steel does not soften. It places Musashi and Mishima in one lineage: sword, discipline, death before dishonor. The narrative is too clean. Masculinity is not preserved. It is rewritten. Each era edits the code to fit its fare. Musashi writes during early Tokugawa consolidation, when violence is being domesticated into order. Mishima performs in postwar Japan, inside a constitutional democracy, where violence is outlawed and nostalgia becomes theater. One works inside a warrior economy. One stages a warrior myth in a modern state. The sameness is aesthetic. The context is not. Act 1. Musashi, a method that's not a myth. Traditional dating places Miyamoto Musashi's birth around 1584. In his preface to Go-Rin no Sho, the Book of Five Rings, he dates his writing precisely, the first 10 days of the 10th month, the 20th year of Kan-e, 1645. He places himself in Higo, on Mount Iwato. He signs it with a blunt credential: age 60 years. That's not poetry, that's a time stamp and a location. He claims his first duel at 13. He claims around 60 encounters by his late 20s. Whether every duel occurred as narrated is secondary. The important thing is this: he documents them. He turns reputation into documentation. In 1612, tradition anchors the duel with Sasaki Kojiro on Ganryu Island. The oar carved into a wooden sword becomes part of the legend. But when Musashi writes, he does not romanticize chaos. He speaks of timing, distance, perception. Timing in strategy cannot be mastered without a great deal of practice. He insists on craft. He calls it the twofold way of pen and sword. Not rage, not purity, practice. In 1645, weakened by illness, he retreats and writes. Soon after, on the 13th of June, 1645, he dies. His final precepts, later known as Dokkōdō, the way of walking alone, stress detachment, discipline, acceptance. But death is not spectacle. It is assumed. Countdown in the year of 1645. Not to a staged act, but to the closing of a life already proven through repetition. Act 2. Mishima, aestheticized proof. Yukio Mishima is born in 1925. He grows up in Imperial Japan. He comes of age in defeat. Post-war Japan adopts a pacifist constitution, not as a vibe, as law. Article 9 doesn't just limit war, it tries to delete it. Japan forever renounces war and declares that land, sea, and air forces, as well as other war potential, will never be maintained. Consumer prosperity rises. Military power is curtailed. Mishima diagnoses this as spiritual vacuum. In Sun and Steel, he names what he's chasing: a language of the body. Words were insufficient. The body must speak. He pushes it further. He wants to begin speaking of the ideas of the flesh and the loquacity of the body. In the 1960s, he forms the Tatenokai, the Shield Society, a private militia of students. Uniformed, drilled, photographed. Discipline is staged so it cannot be ignored. He writes, performs, trains. But unlike Musashi, his battlefield is symbolic. Countdown begins. The 25th of November, 1970. He and 4 followers enter the Japan Self-Defense Forces headquarters at Ichigaya. They take a general as hostage. Mishima steps onto a balcony and attacks the post-war order at its nerve. You back the constitution that denies your very existence. He tries to trigger loyalty as a physical reflex. Tenno Heika Banzai. Soldiers jeer. The script fails. But irreversibility remains available. He returns inside. He commits seppuku. The body becomes the final argument. The countdown, parallel irreversibility. Starting point year 1645. A cave, ink, illness. Months. Starting point year 1970. A balcony, uniform, steel. Hours. One builds authority through repetition. The other attempts to create it in a single irreversible act. Both leave text behind, but their relationships to death differ. Musashi integrates death into craft. Mishima uses death as punctuation. The false narrative exposed. The myth claims continuity. It claims Bushido runs unchanged from battlefield to balcony. But masculinity doesn't continue, it retools. When power structures shift, the code gets rewritten. Warrior to bureaucrat, empire to constitution, sword to spectacle. In Musashi's era, masculinity had to work. Technique decided survival. In Mishima's era, masculinity had to be seen. Visibility decides legitimacy. When institutions stop validating the old code, the body becomes document. Risk becomes authenticity when identity feels unstable. The pattern is visible. First, the body is treated as evidence. Second, risk is framed as purity. Finally, a document remains, to stabilize the act as doctrine. That is how continuity is manufactured, not by preservation, but by repetition under new pressure. Misplaced name. Musashi did not write Hagakure. That text is attributed to Yamamoto Tsunetomo. The confusion persists because myth prefers consolidation. It compresses complexity into lineage. Epilogue. Musashi dies. Mishima dies. Both deaths become symbols. One of disciplined craft, one of aesthetic finality. The blade appears unbroken, but the hand that holds it has changed. And whenever the body is asked to prove what words cannot, myth begins. The way is in training. Sooner or later, myth meets the record. The collapse is quiet.